Thank you for joining us. We are members of the CRYNot Committee, a group of local concerned citizens whose mandate it is to raise awareness about human trafficking. To raise awareness, we give presentations to various local organizations and parent councils. Today, we will share our presentation with you about human trafficking in our communities and what we can do to address this heinous crime.
We're going to begin this presentation with a short video. Although it's very disturbing, it is one that captures the depth and the significance of human trafficking. It's called Oblivious.
I gotta go finish my homework at Jessica's.
Again?
Yeah.
Okay, have fun.
Bye.
Hey, you have 1 hour. You have another appointment.
I know, it's not my first time.
Our goal today is to help shine light on the dark reality of human trafficking and make sure we as a community are not oblivious. So what is human trafficking? Human trafficking involves the recruitment, transportation, or harboring of persons for the purpose of exploitation. Traffickers maintain control through force, sexual assault, violence, and isolation. Victims are often transported across the country to ensure unfamiliar and isolating environments. They're moved from hotel to hotel, often the very hotels where we've stayed for sports tournaments or family road trips. For the purpose of this presentation, we are focusing on human trafficking into the sex trade, as opposed to forced labor. And in particular, we are focused on the recruitment and trafficking of our precious youth. It is reported that 90% of cases in Canada involve domestic trafficking within our own country, as opposed to international human trafficking where it crosses borders. So who is being trafficked? Well, mostly it's our women and girls, over 90%. And although boys and other genders are also targeted, it can be anyone from any family. And in particular, it's our vulnerable youth. Those who struggle with self-esteem, are lonely, are bullied, isolated, or with other social or family issues. It's our Indigenous women and girls, and individuals with addictions or suffering with mental health issues. So we're going to look at a few facts. The first one's very disturbing. The average age of recruitment into the sex trade is between the age of 12 and 14 years old. That's a child that's in grade 7. Every year, 100 to 200 criminal charges are laid in Canada. Unfortunately, only 1 in 10 result in convictions, and there could be various reasons for this. There could be fear from the victim of her trafficker threatening her or her family. She might be afraid to go into court. She may not even identify herself as a victim. We're next door to our neighbors in Peel Region, where it's a concentrated hub of human trafficking activity due to its proximity to Pearson International Airport and the major 400 highways. When our group first formed, between 2018 and 2019, Caledon Dufferin Victim Services was made aware of 22 victims of trafficking in our area. This year, Caledon Dufferin Victim Services is reporting a 214% increase in its first reporting quarter alone. The numbers are certainly increasing. Who are the traffickers? Well, they're known by their victims. 92% of human trafficking victims knew their trafficker, and only 7 to 8% of the cases, the trafficker was a stranger. It is estimated that one victim is worth well over $280,000, and now we've heard over $300,000 a year to their trafficker. Within organized crime, human trafficking has now risen to number 1 ahead of drugs and guns, as reported by Peel Region. Evidence is now emerging that human trafficking is a lower risk to the traffickers, as victims can be sold over and over again, making it more attractive and lucrative to organized crime. The OPP Human Trafficking Unit shared with us that it is surprisingly the smaller rural areas that are being targeted by traffickers. Traffickers see these areas, like Orangeville, as easy targets, less police presence, less awareness of dangers, both from youth and adults, and less money is needed to impress vulnerable youth in a small town versus youth in the city. Youth live online. That's a fact. But unfortunately, this is the main platform traffickers use to their advantage. Youth are curious, open to taking risks. They're trying to understand the world and who they are and how they fit into it. Youth face significant peer pressure to engage and be more present online as a means of being accepted by their peers. Traffickers will look to gain influence over youth. They look for signs of weakness and vulnerability and begin their pursuit to gain a youth's trust. While youth may be aware of internet dangers, they, like many of us at their ages, felt that nothing will ever happen to them. They feel invincible. The following video by Peel Regional Police introduces us to how recruitment into the sex trade begins and some signs for us to look for.
Human trafficking is one of the forms of trauma that when you really understand what people are going through and what is being done to them, if you believe in any kind of existential philosophy, I think it is as close to true evil as I have ever seen in my work with people who have been harmed by other people. And I do a lot of work in interpersonal violence.
Every girl is at risk simply because they are a girl. We want all girls educated in the risks about relationships, just like we believe all girls should be educated and have knowledge about human trafficking, so they know what to do. So it's important to have that conversation with girls, not just sweep it under the carpet, never my girl, never her.
There's something unique about the violation of the body. And when I teach about human trafficking, one of the things I talk about is how the body is actually the scene of the crime. So because it is a violation of one's physical person through sexual behavior, there's actually no way to escape it. You can't get away, you can't wash it off. You cannot forget, you cannot get out. You actually take the violated body with you into your new life if you are ever lucky enough to escape human trafficking.
So there's various ways that a girl can be recruited. A lot of ways that we see is what we call boyfriending. So the young girl meets a guy who, you know, she describes as her boyfriend. Guy can build trust, and then he can start to demand things of her. If you loved me, you would do this. And she will 100% believe and describe him as her boyfriend, but in reality, he is pimping her out, and that's probably one of the major ways. And, you know, sometimes they're too afraid to say anything because of judgment from parents and people that are close to them. What would they say?
And so for me, it's such a painful but passionate piece of work. I'm always shocked when I realize how few members of the community actually know that human trafficking is happening underneath their very noses.
So through our strategy, we're looking at prevention through education. So partnerships with the school boards are really important, letting parents know, letting kids know, teachers, educators, that's huge, starting at the base level. And then intervention through our support network. So support services that are working with more vulnerable youth.
Because for every survivor that we work with, every survivor that we rescue, they will tell us about multiple other survivors that nobody has found, that nobody has saved, that has never been able to reach out for help, and may literally never escape the darkness.
As we saw in the video, there are typically 4 stages of human trafficking. We're going to go through them one by one: luring, grooming and gaming, coercion and manipulation, and exploitation. For the sake of this presentation, we will generally speak of human traffickers as males and victims as females. That's not always the case, but it is the most common. The first stage is luring. This is all about the trafficker wanting to find the right person with some unmet need or void. They need love, affection. They may have low self-esteem. They're targeting someone who is in a vulnerable state. The predator approaches the victim, usually online, but also in places such as schools, malls, their place of employment, weekend parties, out at the park, or even community centers, anywhere where young people gather. He begins by testing their vulnerabilities, their unmet needs, but also their boundaries. The predator is gently probing, asking questions to see if they're the right person, the right fit. They're determining whether that person is looking for what they're offering: a romantic relationship, maybe a false promise of a job, an exciting independent life. The trafficker collects information about the victim, and he begins the process of speaking to her emotions and her heart, making her feel special. Grooming is often referred to as the honeymoon phase, in which an unmet need is filled by giving gifts such as a cell phone, new clothing, jewelry, makeup, shoes, to make her feel special. The trafficker paints an ideal picture: a family, an exciting life, a home, and yet at the same time drives a wedge between her and her own family. Your family just doesn't understand you. They don't get you. It's a promise of safety and security. The relationship becomes more intimate. The trafficker continues noting personal information about the victim's dreams and hopes, what she loves and cares about the most. Little does she know that this information will later be used against her. He may introduce her to drugs and alcohol, all in the guise of having fun. The victim feels like she is in love. She has found her guy. Coercion and manipulation. The trafficker's behavior is devious and calculated. He starts sending mixed messages. He tells her he loves her one day and then confuses her by withdrawing. He withholds information and reduces compliments, all a form of emotional control. He toys with her emotions and behaves erratically, causing her to question, really, how does he feel? He might install stalkerware on her phone to track her conversations and whereabouts at all times. She's confused. She just wants to please him in any way she can to get back in his good books, yearning to return to the honeymoon stage. She longs to regain the feeling of love and safety and security with the one she thought was her protector, who is now actually becoming her trafficker. He begins pushing sexual boundaries and will likely desensitize her to pornography and engage in the acts depicted online. But he makes it all seem so normal. He's prepping her for what's to come. He takes her shopping or gives her money. But now these gifts no longer come free. He's establishing that sex has a price. He may use physical violence or withhold necessities to control her. He fosters any addiction to drugs, motivating her to have sex for drugs or money, making her dependent on him. Even though the victim is starting to feel threatened and pushed beyond her own personal values, she is often in too far. The fourth stage is exploitation. Here he has effectively broken down her self-esteem. He's broken her. He's threatened her. He's abused her. She's isolated from her family and friends. She has nowhere to go. She's become totally dependent on her trafficker. She feels no hope, no value, and the cycle of abuse and control repeats over and over again. So those were the 4 stages of human trafficking. But we like to think that we can bring some positivity to this and bring awareness. And with awareness, there are some key warning signs that we can look for, and maybe we can intervene. The victim's physical appearance changes. She may dress more sexualized. She might have unexplained cuts or bruises. Maybe a new tattoo, but is actually a form of branding by her trafficker. Maybe she looks malnourished, maybe some signs of drug addiction. The victim might have new possessions that can't be explained. Parents can begin to notice changes in her behavior. Maybe she's withdrawn, depressed. Maybe she's not as involved at school or sports or hobbies. Maybe the school grades are dropping. Maybe she's dropped out of school. And parents start to feel a lack of control over the situation. The victim might spend too much time alone on electronic devices. But what's more important is she's insistent on hiding the content of what's on the device. She might refer to a boyfriend who's likely older, but never introduce him or bring him home. She'll avoid any conversation about her whereabouts, or she'll lie, like, I'm just sleeping over at a friend's house. She'll withdraw from family activities and stop hanging out with her regular friends. Perhaps she now has a new circle of friends, but you've never met them. We're now going to watch a touching video called A Father's Story. Steve Bell, who's featured in this video, is a well-known Canadian singer, songwriter, and producer from Winnipeg, and he speaks of the unfortunate reality that trafficking can make its way into any family.
My initial contact with Joy Smith was when my daughter, we discovered through our communication that she sent to us. She was in a very vulnerable, very dangerous situation where she was being held almost as a captive by a man quite far away. And she honestly needed rescue. And when you find out that your child is being trafficked at age 12, and you hear that the worst thing you could imagine has happened to you, has happened to someone you love, your child. It's so unfathomable. It's like your brain won't take in the information. And how can this possibly be? You know, we live in a safe house, we have cars, we have money in the bank. This isn't, you know what I mean? Like how did this happen? And yet it did. And then when you realize that there's no quick escape. This was a decade long thing before she really got out of it, and it's such a staggering piece of information to absorb. And there's guilt and there's all that. Like it's almost like dealing with someone who has suicided. How could we have prevented it? You kind of go through all that. What could we have done? What did we do wrong? My goodness, there's something that totally changes when it happens to your daughter. And what changed for me, and to my shame, I think, you know, when you used to drive down the street and you'd see sex trade workers on the street, and you always sort of tend to think these are people who've made bad choices, they've come from bad environments, all that kind of thing. And yeah, you feel sorry for them, but it's kind of like, well, that's what happens when, and all that kind of stuff. And you kind of go, oh, that's not what's going on here. That's actually not true, And all of a sudden you realize that my kid, right, is in that scenario. And that means these people are someone's kid. These people were loved, and these people had supports and all kinds of things. It's just all of a sudden it's like, oh my goodness. And then you feel that. I think my deepest shame was that I never saw them as people. I always saw them as sort of maybe somewhat less because of the bad decisions they had made, or less worthy of protection, or less worthy of compassion. All of a sudden I'm kind of going, oh my goodness, they have names. Nobody wants to know how deeply embedded this is in our society. And my daughter told me just recently, because she's really attentive to these things, she says, anybody that thinks that this isn't happening within 10 blocks of them is naive. She says, this is not something that's just happening in the north end of Winnipeg, or on Main Street, or in the Drake. She says, anybody that thinks that this isn't happening within 10 blocks of them at any given point is naive.
We at CRYNot are trying to shine a light on the stark reality of the sex trafficking of our youth. So what can you do? Well, number one, make sure your family is safe. Become educated about teen online culture. Have value-based discussions with family members about healthy sexuality, healthy relationships, and online risks. Take the conversation beyond safety. Talk about the ideas that are coming at them from their screens. Question our society's acceptance of sexuality being depicted as the commodification of a human being. Have discussions about empathy. The people on our screens, perhaps the pornography actor, they're real people with real names. If our children can learn to set their own boundaries, build their own self-confidence and self-esteem, they may be able to see past a counterfeit offer from a screen or a stranger. Number two, make sure your neighborhood is safe. Be aware of youth that may be at risk in your neighborhood or among your teens' friends. Watch for the red flags, the warning signs we spoke about. Immediately report suspicious activities. Trust your instincts. And finally, number three, help spread the word. Policing cannot solve this problem. We need to have conversations with our kids and the people we know. We believe that knowledge is power, and through awareness, we can make a difference. We believe that the more we know about it, talk about it, and recognize the warning signs, the more we will be able to reduce incidents in our community. If you are in trouble or know of someone who is, please call Candid and Dufferin Victim Services or the Canadian Human Trafficking Hotline. We invite you to email us with any questions you might have on the subject. We appreciate the time you've given us today to bring awareness to human trafficking. We need your help to spread this awareness to others by going to our website at crynot.ca. Follow us on social media on Instagram and Facebook. Thank you.